Given that our Attorney General is a Democrat who wants to be the Democratic nominee for governor, how can you get him to do any suing action against the federal government?
The legislation, the amendment that I have to my legislation today is so that the Attorney General shall. And the Attorney General has a constitutional right to protect the citizens of Georgia. And so, as we do many times, we have a constitutional principle and then we have underlying statutory law that is give more direction as to what the Constitution states. So when it comes to cap and trade, we are directing the Attorney General that if the federal government tries to withhold any funding or take any action against the citizens of Georgia, that he shall file a lawsuit in order to protect the citizens of Georgia. And that the shall is a word that any attorney will tell you that there's not any interpretation of what that word means.
But y'all have the ability to mandate that he do that? I mean, he can't, he's a separately elected constitutional officer. I mean, he decides for himself what's in the state's legal needs, right? I mean, you can't, just because you pass a law saying that he shall, doesn't mean that he actually shall, does it?
The Constitution says that the Attorney General shall take action to protect the citizens of Georgia. We are further defining what that means from a statutory standpoint. And when we have attorneys I had attorneys look at this. Our legislative counsel head of that, Sewell Brumby, is the one that came up with the amendment to further clarify what it is that the Attorney General action should take in order to make sure that citizens are protected when it comes to any policy when it cap and trade.
So is your legislation also in sort of the states' rights arena? Like, will it go into
I would say that states' rights have been around since the founding of the Constitution. So this is not anything new. So at times, do we need to help the federal government to identify what it is that states can do, what they can't? I believe that is our responsibility as legislators, yes.
Well, it's been alluded to already, I guess, so Mr. Leader, you alluded to the rarity of the legislature kind of setting up these legal challenges against the federal government, and you all have also discussed kind of the you know, the situation with the state's economy. I mean, can we really afford to you know, legally challenge the federal government on these mandates that you all are opposing?
Wow, what we can't afford is the $500 million a year price tag they just decided to hand us last night. That's what we really can't afford. What we can't afford is more Georgia businesses going out of business because some ludicrous cap and trade thing that, by the way, almost specifically targets the southeastern states. If you look at the way the scheme is set up, that those states who don't have the ability to set up windmills and solar panels, as we probably don't here in Georgia, are going to be punished most of all. So if you want to talk about what's going to happen and can you afford it, we might want to ask consumers, are they having a tough time affording their heating bill over the last 3 months? Because if they are, it's going to jump dramatically under cap and trade when Georgia Power has to go out and purchase this renewable energy on the market at prices far in excess of what they have to purchase today. So, yeah, from the affordability standpoint, what's going on in Washington, D.C. Is a travesty. But perhaps the most important issue and question we need to ask ourselves is, can our children continue to afford trillions of dollars of debt every year? That is the irresponsibility that was not necessarily addressed too much here today, but is part of this overall scheme. And that is a Congress that, because they don't live under the balanced budget amendment that Senator Tolleson points to, simply says every wish and desire and want that they have, they will simply hoist the cost of that onto the next generation. That is unfortunate and, in my view, immoral, and they've got to stop. So with that, we've got to stop.
Let me give a little quick story, Mr. Leader, right quick before we go. And this just kind of highlights to me what's going to happen in America. There was a lady that taught at the school in Perry, Georgia, and she was from Canada originally. And her husband travels a lot, and so she decided to move back to Canada this last year to be closer to her family because her husband travels so much. She started having seizures just not long ago. And so she went to the doctor in Canada. Well, they didn't know what was wrong with her, and so they're going to schedule her for an MRI. That MRI is scheduled for 3 months from now. 3 months. Because they have to get in line in Canada under the government program. Now, this may be life-threatening to this lady. She doesn't know, but she's having seizures, and they don't know why. But she's got to go stand in line for 3 months. She may not be savable by that time. You don't know that. So she's going to drive across the border, pay to get an MRI, and go back to her doctor with that information. And then she may have to come back to America and pay to take care of what's wrong with her. What I'm telling you is that same thing's going to occur in America over time. We're going to build lines of people waiting for health care in this country.
How are we gonna do that, Senator?
The Canadians are not going to be able to come here to get their service anymore because they're going to be stuck in line. What was that question?
How are we gonna do that? I mean, how's that gonna come about?
Very easily. As I was in parades this weekend and fish fries and all, and people that I know that are doctors that are my age and older, they told me that Sunday night, if that passes and it gets signed into law, that they promised me that they're going to be retiring. Said that they've worked hard, they've taken care of themselves, they've tried to, invest right, but they're going to retire. And I think you're going to see a broad range of retirement all across this nation of people that aren't going to be willing to work inside that kind of system. And I think also the second part of that is you're going to see a pretty good drop-off of people going to med school in this country. So you're going to have less caregivers, but then you're going to have more people needing care. And that's what builds the lines. It's not that anybody drafted a bill with intent, but that's the unintended consequences of this kind of legislation.